A heart left wondering. The weeks that followed felt like a dream Clara didn't want to wake up from. Ethan's kindness remained constant, gentle smiles in the hallways, light-hearted conversations during lunch breaks, and the occasional shared meal at the cafeteria table. Clara found herself drawn to him more and more. If she didn't see him during the day, she couldn't stop her thoughts from wandering. Where was he? Was he busy with a patient? Did he even notice her absence the way she noticed his? Sometimes, she caught herself wishing for an excuse to ask for his number, but the thought of his reaction made her hesitate. On the days she was assigned to work with him during a delivery, it felt like the universe had handed her a gift. Ethan was focused, calm, and endlessly reassuring to the mothers, but he always found a moment to smile at her or ask how she was holding up. Once, she delivered a file to his office and lingered for just a moment longer than necessary. She wanted to say something, anything, to keep him talking. But her courage faltered, and she left with the words still stuck in her throat. And then, there were the days she didn't see him at all. Those days stretched on unbearably, leaving her restless and distracted. Clara couldn't ask anyone where he was, she didn't want to draw attention or make her feelings obvious. Instead, she told herself it didn't matter. Maybe he doesn't like me that way, she thought more than once. Maybe he's just being nice. The thought stung more than she wanted to admit. One quiet afternoon, Clara was walking through the hospital's main corridor when her eyes caught a familiar figure in the distance. Ethan. Relief flooded her chest, followed immediately by a pang of something she didn't expect, jealousy. He was talking with a female doctor she didn't recognize. The woman was strikingly beautiful, with a confident smile and a laugh that echoed lightly down the hall. They stood close, their conversation easy and animated. At one point, the woman playfully swatted Ethan on the arm, and he laughed, a sound Clara usually loved hearing, but now it felt like a twist in her chest. Clara hesitated, her feet rooted to the spot. She wanted to greet him, to act normal, but the sight of them together made her stomach churn. Summoning her courage, she started walking toward them. Ethan saw her first. His expression brightened. "Oh, our new nurse is here," he said warmly. The female doctor glanced at Clara, her smile friendly but curious. "She's no longer new," the woman said with a chuckle. "She's been here for weeks now." Ethan grinned. "She's still the last person to join our department. That makes her new to me." Clara forced a casual smile. "Hi," she said softly, her voice quieter than usual. Before Ethan could say more, Clara offered a quick nod and turned to leave. "Clara, wait," Ethan started, but she was already walking away, her pace brisk. She didn't look back, though her heart ached with every step. She could feel his eyes on her, but she didn't trust herself to stay. The image of Ethan and the female doctor laughing together burned in her mind, and she hated the way it made her feel. Back in the break room, Clara sat in silence, staring at her untouched coffee. She knew she was being ridiculous. Ethan was friendly to everyone, wasn't he? She had no reason to feel jealous or hurt. "He's not mine," she reminded herself. "He's just my colleague." But no matter how many times she repeated it, the truth remained, Ethan had become more than just a colleague in her heart. And that terrified her. Unbeknownst to Clara, Ethan watched her walk away with a hint of confusion and concern in his eyes. As he turned back to the female doctor, he found himself distracted, wondering what had just happened, and why Clara had seemed so distant. A mind elsewhere, the operating room buzzed with quiet urgency. The team was focused, the sterile atmosphere heavy with concentration. Ethan and another senior doctor were leading the surgery, working meticulously to deliver a baby through an emergency cesarean. Clara stood nearby, her gloved hands ready, but her mind was anywhere but the room. Ethan's voice drifted through her thoughts now and then, the memory of his easy laughter with the female doctor replaying in her mind like a broken record. "Clara," the other doctor said, his voice calm but firm. "Pass me the retractor." She didn't hear him. "Clara." This time, his tone was sharper. Still no response. Ethan glanced up from the surgical field, his brows furrowing as he looked at Clara. "Clara," he said, his voice gentle but commanding. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. Why yes? The retractor, the doctor repeated. Oh. I'm so sorry. She hurried to hand over the equipment, her movements flustered and unsure. The room went silent for a beat. Are you okay? Ethan asked, his eyes searching hers. Clara forced a tight smile, her cheeks burning. I'm fine. Just a headache. A really bad one. Ethan's expression softened, concern replacing the hint of annoyance. You should go take care of that. Nurse Lauren, can you step in? One of the other nurses nodded and moved to take Clara's place. Clara murmured an apology to the team and quickly left the room, her heart racing. An hour later, Clara sat in the break room, replaying the incident in her mind when her phone buzzed. It was a message asking her to meet with the department head. Her stomach twisted as she made her way to the office. Come in, the department head said when Clara knocked. Clara stepped inside, her hands clasped nervously. The head nurse was a stern but fair woman with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. I heard what happened during the surgery, she said, her tone calm but serious. Why didn't you mention earlier that you weren't feeling well? Clara's mouth went dry. I didn't think it was serious enough to bring up. The head nurse sighed, leaning back in her chair. Clara, you're new, so I'm going to let this slide. But I want you to think about something. What if someone's life had been in danger and you couldn't do your job? Do you understand the consequences that could have for the patient and for this hospital? Clara nodded, shame curling in her chest. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again. I hope not, the head nurse said firmly. If you ever feel unwell, tell us. Even if you think you can manage, at least let your colleagues know so they can step in if needed. This time, I won't register it, but don't let it happen again. Thank you, Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Take care of yourself, Clara. You're a good nurse, but you need to be present in the moment. Clara nodded and left the office, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Later that evening, Clara stepped into her apartment, dropping her bag by the door and sinking onto the couch with a sigh. Rough day? Jenny asked, coming out of the kitchen with a mug of tea in hand. Clara nodded. You could say that. Jenny sat beside her, eyes narrowing. What happened? Clara hesitated, but she knew there was no point in hiding it. There was a surgery. I wasn't focused, and I missed something important. My supervisor noticed and called me out on it. She gave me a lecture about how I can't let that happen again. Jenny frowned. Why weren't you focused? You're always so careful. Clara hesitated again, then sighed. I was thinking about Ethan. Jenny raised an eyebrow, her expression equal parts amused and concerned. You were daydreaming about Dr. Ethan during surgery? I know it's ridiculous. Clara said, groaning. But I couldn't help it. I kept wondering if he treats everyone the same way he treats me. If I'm just imagining that I am special to him. Jenny leaned back, shaking her head with a small smile. Clara, you're a nurse. You can't let your feelings distract you during something as serious as surgery. I know, Clara said, throwing her head back dramatically. Believe me, my supervisor already gave me an earful. Please don't start another lecture. Jenny laughed softly, reaching out to squeeze Clara's shoulder. I'm not blaming you, Clara. I know how hard it is when you're in love. Clara froze, her heart skipping a beat. In love? Who said anything about love? Jenny gave her a knowing look. Call it what you want, but you've been crushing on this guy since day one. Maybe it's time to stop torturing yourself and just tell him how you feel. Clara's eyes widened. Tell him. Are you crazy? What if he doesn't feel the same way? Jenny shrugged. Then at least you'll know. You'll stop living in this cage of what if. Clara bit her lip, her mind racing. It's not that easy, Jen. Opening up to a guy like Ethan. It's terrifying. This is 2024, Clara, Jenny said with a smile. And you're not stalking him or anything weird. He's been kind to you, and you like him. There's nothing wrong with telling him how you feel. Clara leaned her head back against the couch, closing her eyes. I'll think about it. Right now, I just need to sleep. Jenny grinned, handing her the mug of tea. Fair enough. But think fast, Clara. You can't let this keep eating you up. Clara nodded, sipping the tea and letting the warmth calm her. But deep down, she knew Jenny was right. One way or another, she needed to figure out what Ethan meant to her, and what, if anything, she meant to him. The lunch date the next morning at work, Clara felt a mix of relief and nervousness as her colleagues greeted her warmly. How are you feeling today, Clara? One of the nurses asked with genuine concern. I'm fine, thank you, Clara said, her smile a little shy. Well, another nurse added, if you ever need us to cover for you, just speak up. We've got your back. Clara felt a pang of guilt. They thought she'd been unwell, yet she'd lied about the headache to hide the real reason for her distraction. Thank you, she said softly, touched by their kindness. I really appreciate it. Later that day, Clara was sent to deliver a file to Ethan's office. As she approached the door, her steps slowed, and her heart quickened. She hesitated before knocking, taking a deep breath. Come in, Ethan's familiar voice called out. She stepped inside, clutching the file tightly. Their eyes met, and Ethan's warm smile sent a flutter through her chest. Hi, she said, forcing a small smile of her own. I'm here to deliver this. She placed the file on his desk, her fingers lingering for just a second longer than necessary. Ethan looked up, his expression softening. How are you feeling today? Better? Yes, Clara replied quickly. I'm fine now, thank you. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. Clara, I know this might be out of line, but I don't think yesterday was just a headache. Do you want to talk about it? Her stomach twisted. So, do you read people that easily? She asked, trying to sound lighthearted. Ethan smiled. No, not always. But you're not just a people to me. You're my colleague, and I'd like to think you're my friend. Clara's breath caught at his words, but before she could respond, Ethan continued. Yesterday, I thought about asking for your number. But I decided it'd be better to ask you directly than take it from your work profile. He picked up his phone and extended it toward her. Can you type it in for me? Her heart raced as she took the phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she entered her number. My phone's in my bag, so if you call, I'll see it when I check later, she said softly, handing it back. Ethan nodded but didn't let her off the hook. You still haven't answered my question. Do you want to talk about it? Clara hesitated, then nodded. Yes. But not here. Ethan's lips curved into a smile. So where and when? Clara's mind spun. This is your chance, she thought. Summoning her courage, she said, why not tomorrow? If you're free, we can talk over lunch. It's the weekend, so I don't know if you have any appointments. His smile deepened, his eyes sparkling with something she couldn't quite name. I don't think I have anything planned. And if I do, I'll cancel. Let's call it a lunch date. He leaned forward slightly. But you have to promise me one thing, you'll open up to me. Clara's cheeks flushed, and her heart soared. I promise, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. That evening, Clara rushed home, bursting through the door with a wide grin. Jenny looked up from her spot on the couch. What's with the face? I'm going to lunch with Ethan tomorrow, Clara said, practically bouncing. Jenny's jaw dropped. Lunch? As in a date? Clara hesitated, then nodded. He called it a lunch date. Jenny laughed, pulling Clara into a hug. This is your chance, Clara. Use it wisely. Tell him how you feel. Clara smiled nervously. We'll see. For now, I just want to survive tomorrow. The next day, by 12:30, Clara's room was a disaster. Piles of rejected dresses covered the bed, and she stood in front of the mirror, frowning at her reflection. "This one's too loose," she muttered, pulling off the dress and tossing it onto the pile. Jenny walked in, surveying the chaos. "Have you even looked at the time? You're running out of it, and your bed looks like a clothing store exploded." Clara groaned. "I know, but I just want to look perfect. He always sees me in my uniform. I want him to notice me, to know I value this moment we're sharing." Jenny shook her head with a knowing smile. "Women. When we're in love, we completely lose ourselves. Just be yourself, Clara. The right dress isn't going to change how he feels, unless you're planning to go to his house afterward for a dessert." Clara laughed, throwing a pillow at her. "Stop it. Nothing like that is going to happen." Jenny smirked. "Who are you trying to convince?" She grabbed a dress from the pile. "Here. This one's perfect. Not too short, not too casual, and the weather's hot, so it works." Clara held the dress up, nodding. "You're right. This is it." Just as she began changing, her phone buzzed with a message. "Ethan, I'm downstairs." "Oh my gosh," Clara whispered. "He's here." "Then stop panicking and get dressed," Jenny said, waving her toward the mirror. Clara dressed quickly, adding a touch of lipstick before rushing to the door. Her heart raced as she rode the elevator down, and when she stepped outside, she saw Ethan leaning casually against his car. When his eyes met hers, his expression shifted. For a moment, he looked stunned, his lips parting slightly as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You look beautiful," he said softly, opening the car door for her. Clara's cheeks burned as she smiled. "Thank you." She slid into the car, her heart pounding with excitement and nerves. Ethan climbed in after her, and as they pulled away from the curb, Clara couldn't help but think that this moment felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. Love worth the wait. As Ethan drove through the city, the warmth of the late afternoon sun spilled into the car. Clara sat beside him, her heart racing in anticipation. She barely noticed the hum of the engine, all she could focus on was the man sitting next to her. "I made a reservation at a Korean restaurant," Ethan said casually, glancing over at her. "And I got us tickets to a movie later, if you're up for it." Clara's heart swelled with excitement. She tried to keep her voice steady. "Whatever you want to do today, I'll do it with you." Ethan smiled, his eyes softening. "Thank you for giving me your time, Clara." They arrived at the restaurant and were led to a cozy table tucked into a corner. The meal was delicious, but the real magic was in their conversation. They discovered they shared a love for trying new foods, late-night reading, and hiking, though Clara confessed she was terrible at navigating trails. Ethan laughed. "Remind me never to let you lead." Clara grinned. "Only if you promise to take me hiking sometime." "Deal," Ethan said, his gaze lingering on hers a moment too long. As they waited for dessert, Ethan leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Are you ready to talk about it now?" Clara hesitated, her heart pounding. "Not here," she said, a little breathless. "After dessert, let's go to the park. We have time before the movie." Ethan nodded, smiling. "The park it is." The park was quiet, the golden hues of the setting sun casting a warm glow over everything. They walked slowly, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers. Clara felt like she was in a dream, one she didn't want to wake from. Finally, they sat on a bench near the lake, the water reflecting the orange and pink hues of the sky. Ethan turned to her, his tone gentle but serious. "Clara," he began, "I'm asking because our line of work is tough. It's not just the physical demands, it's the emotional weight. Seeing people in pain, losing patience, putting your own problems aside to focus on others, it's a lot. Many people in this field struggle with depression because they don't talk about what's bothering them." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I'm not trying to pry. I just care about you, as a colleague and as a friend. I don't want you to lose yourself in the stress." Clara looked down at her hands, gathering her courage. "Ethan, I know this might sound selfish, but You're the reason I was distracted during the surgery. Ethan's brows lifted in surprise. Me? Clara nodded, her cheeks burning. I've been thinking about you so much. I like you, a lot. You've been so kind to me, but you never said what your intentions were. When I didn't see you for a few days, I started overthinking. Then, seeing you with that female doctor. I felt jealous, even though I had no right to be. She exhaled shakily. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I've fallen for you, Ethan. And if I'm not your type, I'll understand. But I couldn't keep it in anymore. Ethan stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached out, cupping her face and pulling her into a soft, lingering kiss. Clara pulled back, her heart racing. Is that a yes? Ethan chuckled, his thumb brushing her cheek. It's a yes, and no. Clara blinked, confused. What do you mean? Ethan sighed, his voice lowering. Let me tell you a story. I was in a relationship with a fellow doctor once. At first, everything was great. But she had personal struggles, anxiety and depression, that she didn't share with me. By the time I realized what was going on, it was too late. It cost her job and almost cost me mine. She wanted me to quit my job because our shifts made it hard to see each other. I refused, but I still tried to find a way to make it work. Unfortunately, her struggles impacted her work, and a patient's life was put at risk. After that, she didn't want anything to do with me anymore. When I met you, I liked you right away. But I held back because I didn't want to risk another heartbreak. And yesterday, when you lost focus in the surgery room, it brought back all those memories. Ethan's voice softened as he looked into her eyes. So where does that leave us? Clara reached for his hand. Ethan, I didn't know you went through that. But I'm not her. What happened yesterday was a mistake, and it won't happen again. Why don't we give ourselves 3 months? If it doesn't work, we'll stop. But I believe it will work, I know it will. Ethan smiled, his thumb brushing over her hand. You're so sweet, Clara. Let me stop being a coward and ask you properly. He took a deep breath, his tone soft but confident. Clara, you're beautiful and kind. I've liked you since the moment you asked me for directions in the hallway. I was scared to take a chance, but you've shown me how brave you are. Will you be my girlfriend? Clara giggled, tears glistening in her eyes. Yes. Ethan kissed her again, his lips lingering against hers. Clara pulled back with a playful smile. Do you like my lips that much? Ethan grinned. They're soft and cute. I can't help myself. He kissed her once more, then glanced at his watch. But if we don't leave now, we'll be late for the movie. The movie was the perfect end to their day. Clara leaned against Ethan's shoulder, her heart full. From that day on, their relationship blossomed. Even with their demanding schedules, they found time for each other, proving that love and work could coexist. Years later, Clara smiled as she watched Ethan chase their 2 children around the park. Their love had only grown stronger, built on trust, communication, and the courage to take a chance. Sometimes, all it takes is a little push to get what you adore. With love, honesty, and communication, 2 people can create a perfect relationship, even in the same demanding profession. The end.